So you probably already know that when we're doing personal development and we're trying to improve our money situation, our health, our relationships, our spirituality, our happiness, we're trying to quit our addictions, we're trying to be better versions of ourselves, you probably already realize that most of the work is done in the process of changing your mind, changing the way you're looking at the problems that you have, changing your perspectives about dating, learning more about business or about money, changing your mind about health or even about religion, about spirituality. If you haven't realized this yet, then here you go. Personal development is not about just doing action steps, like just doing no fap or just doing exercise at the gym in this sort of naive way where you just kind of assume that you already know how to develop yourself because you watched like 5 videos about it, or you're just kind of like taking action without studying first. Okay, so this process of personal development, there's a balance between study and practice. We need to do both, but especially in the beginning of your journey, you need to remember that most of the work is done in your mind, changing around the rigid frameworks and worldviews and belief systems that you have, because the way whenever you feel stuck in your life, the reason why you're probably doing personal development at all is because you feel stuck in your social skills, or you don't feel as confident as you'd like to be, or you'd like to be making some more money, or you just want to feel happier, you want to quit your addiction. So generally when we try to grow and expand ourselves, it's because we felt stuck. So, like for me, for example, when I was 16, I was so addicted to video games and porn and smoking weed, and I had no vision and I didn't know what to do with my life. I felt like I was wasting my life, but I felt stuck in my bad habits, and I didn't know how to quit no matter how hard I tried. So that's why I started studying personal development. And the first thing that I realized, I was very lucky that one of my first mentors I found, Leo Gura on actualize.org, he was saying, hey man, you know that personal development, most of it is actually just about working on your psychology, changing the way you look at your life. Because the reason why you've gotten yourself stuck is because of your thinking. Your mind, the way you use your mind, creates your life situation. So, what I want to talk about in this video is that one of the key tools that you have in your personal development toolbox, one of the key practices that you should be doing daily on a daily basis is researching and studying new perspectives, opening your mind to new ways of looking at life, following your interest, but just being curious. Okay, this is very important. It's something that comes very naturally to me because of my personality type. I'm an ENTP in Myers-Briggs, and the curiosity function is the first function. So my psychology is wired just to be insatiably curious and wanting to check and learn new ideas more and more and more, to a fault almost, right? I just study and study and study and study and study, and I forget to share sometimes. But the lesson you can learn from me that I found extremely useful is to realize that whenever you feel stuck in a situation, let's say you're playing a puzzle in a video game, you're trying to pass a certain puzzle, you've been stuck on it for an hour. The reason why you're stuck on the puzzle is because you tried so many options, but usually it requires a zooming out or a new angle to look at the puzzle from. You need a different kind of thinking in order to solve the puzzle. This is something that from systems thinking is called requisite variety. So whenever you're trying to solve a problem, you require requisite variety, which means you require an abundance of options and potentials in order to solve this problem. So when you're going to solve a puzzle, you need to look at many different perspectives and consider hundreds of different options. You need to be more creative than your problems. You need to have more creative ways of approaching the issue. And the way that you do this is simply by researching and studying many, many, many different perspectives of life. Looking at life from different angles, weird angles, quirky angles, radical, obscure ways of looking at reality, like Islamic mysticism, or like alternative history, or like even just like practical success. So what I found in my experience is that when I read books and I watch videos from a variety of different thinkers who have totally different trainings, they have different lineages of different teachers from different parts of the world with different mental biases, different ways of making sense of life, different forms of problem solving, different ideologies and dogmas, etc. What I've done is I've collected hundreds of different ways of thinking so that my mind can become more loose and flexible. So I want to provide you with some practical examples here of just like how this has helped me and how this can help you as well. Loosening your mind. And whenever you're faced with a problem, considering that it doesn't have to get solved in the way that you think it has to get solved. Sometimes there's other options that you're cutting yourself off to because your mind gets stuck in these habitual ways of thinking. For example, when I was working on selling online information, like creating a coaching program or a course, I thought that there was like one way that it had to be done, that I needed to make a course. It needed to have pre-recorded videos with week 1, week 2, week 3. It needed to be organized with information, and it needed to have these like training sessions, etc. Because I just thought that was the only way that it was possible to make money online. It's selling some sort of coaching or course. I just thought that was the only option. You got to make a course. So for a year, I tried making a course. I made a course, but it just always felt inauthentic. It felt wrong. It felt unnatural, and I just kept failing, so I felt stuck. This was when I just opened my mind to studying new perspectives, and I'm remaining open to new ways of looking at the problem. So I had a meeting with this person that I found online. I just chatted with him, and he happened to be really into online business, and his teacher was discovering this idea of whenever you're selling coaching or you're selling your expertise or your knowledge online, that actually the best way to do it is to be open and loose about the fulfillment mechanism. You don't need it to be a course or to be weekly coaching or to have a step-by-step model. Just kind of loosen it up a little bit and be open to receiving what the fulfillment mechanism is. So what I would do then is basically I would sell a client, and I would give a loose overview of generally what we're going to do within the coaching agreement, but the actual way that it unfolded, I would let it be loose. So I wouldn't stick to this rigid structure of like, in the first week we have to do this, in the second week we have to do this, in the third week we have to do this. I just loosen it up, and I'd leave space for my intuition, for the problems to arise organically so that the solutions can arise organically, and I would allow the coaching to kind of take on its own emergent sort of properties by loosening my grip and being open to alternative options. So this was how studying different perspectives, new ways of looking at things, and being loose and open to new ways of solving the problem helped me, because it was actually very difficult for me to let go of my rigid attachment to needing it to be a course. I was like attached in my mind. I think it was a fear-based belief. See, this is the thing, is whenever you have fear-based beliefs, no, it has to be a course. Like, why? Why does it have to be a course? So I know you may not relate to this if you're someone who isn't, in this domain, but this story can be applied to a lot of other things. So one thing that has helped me specifically is studying weird and obscure perspectives. Like recently I'm reading this Kindle book called The Masters of Limitation. And this book was written by a human alien hybrid who is channeling. So he has a telepathic link with a human on Earth and is writing the book through him. And this human-alien hybrid actually exists in a parallel reality from the future. Okay? So that's the information that I'm learning about, and I'm open-minded to, because the point of personal development is eventually to reach higher levels of cognitive development, which Maslow mapped as self-actualization and as self-transcendence. So if we actually want to get to self-transcendence, what's required is a radical opening of yourself to new forms of experiences and also new forms of ideas as well. Not being scared of new ideas, just being humble and loose. Like, what if? Like, how do you know that's like what I just said? Like, how do you, like, if you say, oh, well, Adam, that's crazy or that's impossible, the question is, okay, how do you know? Are you sure? What frameworks are you using to evaluate the probability or the likelihood of what even just the premise of the book, let alone the information itself? And you might say, okay, well, Adam, I'm open to that possibility. Sure. And that's good. That's very important. You need to really be open to these like radical, weird perspectives. So it's written by Bashar, and Bashar in this book, he's describing certain alien races that his society has discovered, because Bashar's society is a lot more advanced than human society, and they are able to make contact with other alien civilizations. And in the book, he's describing some crazy alien civilizations. Like, I'll read one to you. The Vika Pani is my civilization's name for the next species. It means seed dancers in our language, and is a reference to the nature of these beings. Although the Vika Pani have no general name for their kind, they have dozens of names for the various configurations and personality states they're capable of expressing. Imagine a large 3-foot long worm or snake like being without eyes, as humans have, but with sensory organs along the length of their bodies that can be adapted to see, hear, taste, smell, or provide other sensations as required. Each being is sexless. All individuals are identical, completely indistinguishable from one another until they join together to create more complex identities. Special linking organs at one end of each individual allow them to physically and neurologically connect, turning 2, 3, 4, or up to 8 of them into a being resembling a starfish or a headless octopus. All right. Another interesting example here. The next culture is an alien in the extreme and possesses qualities that allow them to simultaneously exist in multiple dimensions. This grants them the ability to interact with various phenomena that would normally annihilate beings that inhabit quote unquote normal physical realities. Though these beings have a name for themselves, it's practically unpronounceable to species that use language to communicate, and it's more akin to a vibrational quote unquote equation of energy. The R, as they're called, or the closest approximation in your English language would be the R in each case is trilled, somewhat like the purr of a cat. All other sounds are like a whisper, and the apostrophe represents what humans would perceive as a glottal stop. We'll refer to them simply as R for convenience. The R are capable of such feats such as extracting information from the event horizon of a black hole or passing unscathed through the dense matter of a neutron star. They appear as abstract dark blue nodes with long extensions similar to a neuron. Although that's the part perceivable by physical beings, the R are much more than that, and it requires specialized senses or technology that can peer into other dimensions to reveal their complete form, which is a constantly undulating cloud of quantum particles. Okay. So yeah, I share this just as a little tiny snippet to show you what it really means to be radically open-minded. And it's important to stretch the limits of your mind, to stretch your open-mindedness, to be open to considering things that you wouldn't normally be used to. Because here's the problem. The problem is that when you come to Earth, when you're born, you don't know anything. You're like a blank slate. You don't know what's possible or what's true. So the question might be, well, Adam, how do you know that's even true? It sounds like fiction. And the question is, how do you know it's not true? What if it is true? See, it's easy to have a bias against just shutting off all new programs, like if your mind is a computer, whenever you're going to install a new program, your antivirus software can easily just like dismiss all new ideas and say, well, that doesn't fit into what I currently believe, so it must not be true, or that's too far outside my possibility space. So the core thing that at the end of the day you got to realize is that your consciousness is infinite and can dream up infinite potentials. So reality is infinite parallel realities, and there's infinite types and forms of beings that can take infinite different shapes and sizes and dimensions. They can have infinite different qualities in all sensory fields, infinite types of smells and tastes and touches and senses. The universe is infinite. There's no limit. And you might say, well, Adam, how do you know it's infinite? Well, it's just through direct experience. If you have a spiritual awakening experience, let's say you can do 10 DMT trips, you can just actually see for yourself that, oh yeah, reality is definitely infinite. There's even stories from Buddhism of the Buddha would disappear for a split second, and then when he would come back, there was like just like a little lapse in the Buddha, and his assistant Ananda was watching him very closely, and he asked him later, he's like, Buddha, I noticed while you were giving that talk there, you just kind of disappeared for a split second. What happened? And the Buddha was like, Ananda, you're very perceptive. You see, as I was talking, I quickly went to another dimension and gave a Dharma talk there to help those beings. They were interested in awakening as well. And in this dimension, the beings needed a completely different form of Dharma, so I had to quickly just give it to them. And Ananda was like, please, like share that Dharma with us. Don't just give it to those other beings in the other dimension. And the Buddha was like, oh no, you guys wouldn't understand it. It's completely different. And Ananda was like, no, please, I want it. We need it, please. So eventually the Buddha was like, okay, so he taught that type of Dharma, or that type of teaching, which then became Abhidhamma, which is this like very segmented and structured approach to teaching the Dharma. Everything is listed out because the Buddha said in that other dimension, the beings needed everything to be listed out because that's how their minds worked. So that's just one example of like the awakened ones forever have known that reality is infinite and there's infinite potentials. And whenever you feel limited in your life, it's not because you're actually limited. It's because your mind is not expansive enough. You didn't check enough angles. You didn't read enough books, you could say, or you didn't open your mind enough to new ways of looking at the world and thinking of things. And you might say, oh, Adam, but then, my friends, my family, they're going to call me a conspiracy theorist or a crackpot, or, I don't want to be someone wearing a tinfoil hat. And what I'm saying is that you don't have to like become an ideological quack when you study new perspectives. You can just be interested in them and just hold them loosely. So for me, the benefit of this is that, so I'm looking at alien dimensions, and I've read multiple books about this at this point. And read books about the history of Atlantis, alternative views of history, alternative dimensions, levels of hell, levels of heaven. I've spoken to shamans, asking them questions about the existence of non-physical entities and how they attach to humans, and how to get rid of them and how to interact with them and so forth. So the point is that when you're attempting to reach higher levels of cognitive development, the mind has to be open to non-ordinary phenomena. Non-ordinary, non-linear forms of sense-making. Thinking in terms of dimensions, in realms, or you can jump to conclusions in interesting ways. And at the end of the day, it's about looseness, being loose, being open. You might say, well, Adam, how do you know any of this stuff is true? And the point is that after you study enough different angles and perspectives, there's so much overlap that it's actually more difficult to prove that it's not true than that it is true. Like, for example, the existence of non-physical entities that can latch on to humans. This is something that is mentioned in every single mythology, in every single tribal culture and aboriginal culture all over the world, on every single continent, in all cultures, in all over the earth. And there's a lot of overlapping patterns. There's a lot of creatures and ideas and ways that they interact with humans. Some beings live underneath the ground, like for example, in many different cultures, like in Celtic culture, they have leprechauns, And then in African cultures, they have these other beings that live underneath the ground, and there's gnomes in some cultures, and then there's dwarves in other cultures. So there's just a lot of talk about subterranean beings that live underneath the ground. And you might ask, well, okay, well then why haven't we discovered scientific evidence of this if it's true? And that's a good question, and that's exactly what I'm saying, is to leave your mind open. Why haven't we discovered scientific evidence? Who knows? So it's important to realize that just because something isn't proved scientifically, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Maybe that means it's just not studied. Maybe there's no funding going into the research and development of this topic. Right? This is true, and so then we can apply this lesson into the domain of health. For example, like recently I've been studying how if you rub banana peels on your skin, it can help to rejuvenate your skin. There's antioxidants and vitamins and stuff on the peel of the banana. You can rub it on your skin, and it's very nutritious for your skin. But then I was looking at studies that there's no scientific evidence that this is possible, or that there's no studies that conclusively prove that banana peels can actually benefit your skin. And there's numerous articles written from dermatologists claiming that there's no science. But if you do more research, you realize that there's no evidence because there's no studies. No one studied it. No one checked to see if it works. So it's easy to say, oh yeah, it doesn't work because there's no science. Yeah, but there's no science because there's no experiments. No one checked to see. Because if it was found that banana peels actually were really good for your skin, then that would decrease the need for many health skin products, many creams and potions and expensive tubes of antioxidants that you buy from the store and that dermatologists are paid to recommend. Imagine like you didn't need to take those prescriptions, but instead you could just like rub banana peels on your face and you'd have vibrant, beautiful skin. So there's a conflict of interest there. The dermatologists aren't interested in studying. No one is interested in discovering the potentially healing powers of banana peels on the skin, because it actually would lose everyone money. Everyone would lose money. No one would gain from it monetarily. Now, the average people like you and me who aren't selling skin products, we would gain from it, because now we don't have to buy creams and shit. We can just like eat healthy and like rub banana peels on our face and we'll be good. And this like obsoletes the need for all these creams and potions. So the same kind of concept applies to celery juice as well, where like it actually helps to heal and reverse hundreds of different chronic illnesses, but there's no scientific evidence about it. Yeah, because again, there's no study going into it. The funding for research is very limited, because again, what if celery juice actually heals eczema, which it literally did for me in my experience and for millions of other people around the world. There's like too much anecdotal evidence to deny. And the reason why is because the person who is bringing this information, the medical medium, Anthony William, he's actually channeling the information from the spirit of compassion, and it's giving high quality, detailed evidence and information about how the body works and how certain diets like that include celery juice and lots of fruits and lots of vegetables, specifically how it helps to heal and reverse chronic illnesses that science is completely in the dark about. Like totally, like complete failure to have any knowledge about illnesses like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, eczema, psoriasis, autoimmune disorders, leaky gut syndrome, SIBO, and MS, and even autism, ADHD, and a lot of these things we're completely in the dark about, because what if the solution is just eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, and drink celery juice, and then everything is healed. You know how much money is lost if that is true? A lot. So another thing I wanted to mention is that most of the cutting edge information that is coming to Earth in the year 2024, in coming years, a lot of it is channeled. It's coming from spiritual sources. And this has been happening for thousands of years. Like, for example, in the Quran, allegedly, the entire Quran was channeled by the Prophet Muhammad, which for its time was a very cutting edge system of law and of spirituality and of living, that actually the Quran actually has lots of very useful practical information in it, like, for example, how to process animal meat so that it's halal, so that it's holy. But it's actually just very practical. Like, hey, you don't want to torture and beat the animals. You want to kill them with a clean, sharp knife very quickly. You don't want to show them the knife. You don't want to sharpen the knife, because think about it. If you're sharpening your knife in front of a sheep before you kill it, the sheep is intelligent. It knows it's about to die, and it causes stress in the animal. It releases cortisol. It releases adrenaline. These things are actually toxic. Adrenaline, especially, it's toxic. Your body needs to actually almost sponge it up so that it doesn't poison you. Adrenaline is very toxic. It's good for short bursts of fight or flight, but it is toxic. So if you release adrenaline in the animal you're about to eat, and then you go to eat its flesh, you're just increasing the bad karma. You're increasing the toxins that you're physically ingesting on the physical level. And then also spiritually as well, one thing that science doesn't understand is that emotions are released chemically in the body, and they actually can get stored in muscle tissues. And then you're eating the meat of this animal that's not halal, and then you're eating the negative emotions and the suffering and the trauma. So that's just an example of how a channeled source of information, like in the Quran, can give a lot of practical info. And this is all happening with the medical medium information, for example, like with Bashar, like with another amazing book called Conversations with God. There's another one like A Course in Miracles as well, which I find a little bit less practical. It's kind of cryptic and difficult to read. But yeah, there's just a lot of, most of the cutting edge information on Earth is channeled. And another example is some of the meditation practices that I do come from Tibetan Buddhism that are discovered via terma. So terma is a term that means hidden. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but basically the teachings are hidden in high rocks in the Himalayas, and they don't ever get discovered until they're ready. So the way the terma will be discovered is, let's say some yogi is meditating and then he has a vision that it's time for a new terma to be revealed. And maybe a deity will come to him in his dream and will show him a location on the mountain that's a 13-day hike away, and you need to bring 27 people with you. And there's just this whole, like, it's like this superstitious sort of like spiritual ritual that can't be explained in terms of materialistic science. Like in spiral dynamics, for example, which is, so I know I'm jumping all over the place. This is my mind, okay? It's just, I study everything, and that's how it happens. So in spiral dynamics, which is a system that scientifically documents the stages of human psychological development, after stage orange, which is just materialistic, physicalistic science, which most of society is at, where maybe you're most likely to have a big parts of your psyche still at orange. As you move higher into higher stages of psychological development, which is what we're trying to do in this work, in self-actualization, on this channel, but just in general in humanity as well, we're helping humanity ascend up higher levels of consciousness. it's seen that one of the higher stages that we have documented, stage turquoise, actually has a sort of return to the tribalistic, magic, ritualistic, superstitious sort of qualities of stage purple, which is one of the most rudimentary and basic stages, which is related to like tribes in the Amazon, or just like tribes like in Polynesia or whatever. So stage turquoise is almost like a return to this, but not a regression. It's like revisiting the same quality of being, but just on a higher dimension or on a higher plane of existence. So yes, in advanced ways of being, advanced ways of existing, you its life becomes almost like this magic ritual that actually is important, that you like don't break certain cosmic laws or rules. Like you can imagine the shaman Don Juan from Carlos Castaneda's books, The Teachings of Don Juan. It's this like advanced form of shamanism where he's clearly not like a superstitious tribal person who has no higher levels of thinking. He's clearly a grounded, developed human being who's kind and who's not like childish in the sense that a stage purple person would be. But he's actually reached a higher level of being where there's a superstition, but it's like an advanced kind of superstition. So that's what I'm describing here, is if you want to reach higher levels of being, you need to open up your mind to perceiving reality as a magic ritual or as an infinite range of different forms of consciousness. It could include science as well. You don't have to, do the rain dance or you don't have to, be smoking DMT every day. You could be a scientific thinker that just incorporates and includes spiritual insights from different perspectives. But all of this to say, when you're trying to solve your problems in your life, the odds are you just didn't study enough perspectives. Your mind isn't able to integrate and connect enough different lenses and angles to have enough requisite variety, enough possibility range to solve the problem that you're struggling with. It's like when you're playing chess, you need to be more creative than your opponent. Your opponent is trying to like outthink you, and then you need to try to outthink his outthinking. So you would need to study to be a good chess player. You would need to study hundreds or thousands of different games from the past. You need to study different strategies, different potentials, different options. So the same is what you do in actual life as well. You study hundreds of different perspectives, which is something that I'm going to be helping you to do here on this channel. And I'm releasing a book list very soon. I'm just writing all the reviews. It'll be out in probably the next week. It's kind of a lot of work, but there's a lot of different books that I recommend on that list that you can get going with your studying and your learning of how reality works. And I hope this was practically helpful for you. I want you to just realize that like your mind doesn't know what's going on in life. Your culture gives you a very narrow, very limited band of how life works in terms of money, in terms of relationships, in terms of health, in terms of physics, in terms of science, in terms of religion. You're functioning, if you're using the default operating system that you've been just indoctrinated into by culture, you got to understand you're using a very limited operating system, like an Apple iPhone, for example. Yeah, sure, it works for survival purposes, but eventually the possibility space of what you can do on an iPhone is very, very limited. Now, I know the new operating system has added some extra range of customization, but like the older iPhones were super limited. Like you just have a grid with apps, and that's basically the whole phone. You could change your lock screen, and that's about the whole range of customization. So what I'm saying is, if you're trying to live a custom life that is potentially so freeing, where you can have all these different experiences and you can be free to explore the range of beautiful potentials in life, and you can maximize your full potential, and you can just squeeze the full juice out of your life, and you can feel amazing. You're going to need to jailbreak that default operating system that you've been given, and it requires you to do some research how to jailbreak it, how to expand your mind, how to change your beliefs, how to change your habits, how to be more open with the way you view things. So that's what I try to share here on this channel, and I try to give you resources and tips and stuff for how to do that. And yeah, I'm also having weekly conversations as well in my coaching program, where we every week we just gather together and we talk about how to maximize your creative potential, your spiritual growth. We do meditation and stuff together, and we do a lot of question and answer, group contemplation. We're just kind of figuring out what's going on here in life. So if that's something that you want to have, that community aspect in your life, and you want to be able to ask questions about what is life and how does it work and what do I do and how do I grow spiritually, and just like you need help with making sense of life, then I can provide some of that, as I've studied a lot. And yeah, if you're interested in joining that, you can book a call with me in the description, and I'll chat with you and see where you're at and how I can help you. And otherwise, yeah, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.